Hi girls, gays, and theys. My name is Jess, and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. So today I'm going to be doing my fall wrap up. I guess this is like a combined wrap up for September and October. I decided not to do a September wrap up because I only read 4 books and that did not feel like enough to make a video about. So I just decided to combine September and October, and I'm going to be doing like a wrap up mini reviews of all of the books. I think I read 16 books across September and October, and I'm going to be talking about them in order from worst to best. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video if you want to know my favorite book of the last 2 months, and let's just get into the wrap up. So if you watched my recent reading vlog where I read the highest and lowest rated books on my Goodreads TBR, you will probably not be surprised by this first book, which is the official worst book I read over the last 2 months, and that is YN by Esther Yee. This was a weird book. If you want to hear my complete thoughts, you can definitely watch that vlog. It's entirely too long and I ramble entirely too much about this book. Basically, this is like sad girl lit fic about this woman who becomes obsessed with this K-pop group, starts writing self-insert fan fiction, kind of starts to blur the lines of reality and fiction. She ends up stalking this K-pop group member that she's obsessed with, goes to Korea to find him, finds out that like him in real life is different than how she imagines him to be. I know, shocker. But basically this book was just really weird. It was almost trying to be like shocking. There were like some weird gory moments. I originally picked this book up because I thought the idea of exploring obsession over like a celebrity and writing self-insert fanfic was going to be super interesting, but really this was just not about that. Like it didn't really have a good like inside look into that concept. I thought maybe it would be more like thrillery. It was just really weird and I really did not like it, and I gave it 1 star. Next on my list is The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. I gave this book 2 stars, and this is the second book in is it called the Broken Earth trilogy? Is that right? I think that might be right. Basically, this is like a post-apocalyptic series that kind of like asks the question, what will the world be like if global warming like continues? This world is apocalyptic. There are these seasons where these like horrible weather conditions happen and basically wipe out the population every so many years. And in the first book in this trilogy, a new season has started and the main characters are dealing with the ramifications of that. There's also like magic, interpersonal relationships, politics, all kinds of stuff going on. I personally don't love these books because, well, one, there's not a lot of romance. I will say there is queer rep in the form of there is a trans side character, but like there's just not much for me in this series. Like this is not the kind of thing that I would typically read for myself, but I am reading it for the Fantasy Series book club. Oftentimes I provide the like negative voice in the discussion. I feel like so many of these fantasy series are just not the kind of like fantasy that I read. I love fantasy, but like not this. You know, this is just not for me. I need some more romance. I need some characters that are more likable than these. I kind of don't like any of the characters. They're kind of horrible. And also in the second book, like it very much had second book syndrome. Nothing happened. It really just felt like a filler book, so that made it even worse. The next book on my list is Island Time by Georgia Clark. I also gave this book 2 stars for entirely different reasons. This is like a chick lit kind of dramedy kind of story, which is again not something I typically read. I'm reading this for a video that will hopefully come out in December. At the core of the story, there is a sapphic romance, and I feel like if that was what the focus was for this book, it would have been better. But this book was kind of almost trying to be like Leanne Moriarty-esque, and I don't know if that's because it was set in Australia that I made that connection, but it was very much like a family drama and it did not follow one main storyline. There was basically a POV of every single character. There were about 10 characters, so it was just a lot. I did not explain the plot of this book yet, but basically these 2 families who are connected through the marriage of their daughters go on this vacation together to this like remote island in Australia, and while they're there, this horrible tsunami happens and cuts them off from the rest of the world for 6 weeks, so they kind of have to deal with not only being with one another but the ramifications in their personal lives, and making it really like puts things into perspective for them and helps them make like life decisions and things. I think I was expecting this to be a lot lighter. It took quite a dark turn, and also all of the characters were very unlikable and made really horrible decisions. Particularly, I won't even say particularly, they all were like making heinous decisions, and the main like romance couple, I can't remember any of their names, but the girl was just like, I don't like calling women crazy, but she was crazy. Like she was like expecting this girl that she had just met a couple weeks ago to like commit to the marriage and babies and moving in together. And she was like, whoa, hold on, like I really like you and I want to keep being together, but this is a lot, you need to slow down. And she just like kept going on about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so too much for me. Too long, too boring, characters sucked. It just like it wasn't that enjoyable to read. Next on my list is Fakers with Benefits by Willow Dixon, which I am actually really disappointed about. I gave this book 2 stars as well. I really like had such high hopes for this one because I really love Willow. Like I do really like her work. I think it's so fun. Have read almost like all of her stuff on KU this year, and I have like she's one of my new favorite authors, but this book just really let me down. It felt like it was written really quick. It felt like it was not edited properly. It felt like it didn't have like a distinct voice or vision to it, and it just felt like it was put out in a rush and the time wasn't taken to like make it a fully developed, coherent story. This is the second book, a series called The Crimson Club, and the Crimson Club is like a male exotic dancers club, and so all of our like, or at least one of our main characters in each book works at this club. So this book is Nick's book, and Nick is kind of like the young, like angelic looking one at the club. I think a lot of the others see him as kind of naive, but he ends up meeting this like high-powered businessman who needs to get married, or at least have his family think that he's going to get married in order to get his inheritance from his father. You know how that goes. So he ends up hiring Nick to pose as this like fake boyfriend, fake fiance, until he can get his inheritance. But of course, along the way, they end up falling for one another. In theory, like this is a really good concept for me. I just did not feel like the characters were fully realized or the plot. There were so many chapters in this book that were just complete filler that did nothing to like further the plot. One of my biggest complaints too was that we didn't get to see any of the like events that Nick got taken to with this man. Like it would have been so fun and interesting to like see Nick fumble through like pretending to be this man's long-term boyfriend, fiance, but we like always just saw the aftermath, like them interacting after the event, which was not that interesting. And they basically like hit the ground running, like just hooked up right away, which I would have liked a little bit more build up, you know? Like I don't always need a slow burn, I just need a little bit more setup, you know? Also, Nick was just really annoying. I feel like Willow was like trying to write him as like Gen Z, and so reading that on page is just so cringy and not cute. I had a lot of issues with this one. I did not think it was very fully realized. I miss the days of Never Have I Ever Submitted to My Enemy, because that one is the best. But yeah, this one was a letdown for me, which is unfortunate. Next on my list is The Chandler Legacies by Abdi Nazemian. This one also quite let me down because I was really anticipating it. I have loved a couple books, or maybe just one book by Abdi Nazemian before, so I was expecting this to like blow up to that one, and it sadly didn't. I think I ended up giving this one 2.25 stars or 2.5 stars, so it was just like very average, very okay. Some things about it bothered me. It was kind of overall like a forgettable, inoffensive book. This book is kind of like dark academia for the younger set. It's set in this like prestigious New England boarding school. Our 5 main characters have all been accepted into this like elite writing group, and so it's kind of Breakfast Club-esque. They come from all different walks of life, but they all come together in this club to like become friends and support one another. And they also decide within this writers group to kind of tackle some of the abuse and power imbalances that happen in this boarding school through their like words, through their stories. It was good. I don't know. I feel like for one, I was not the audience. It read a little too young for me. Also, the characters were just kind of annoying. I don't know. I don't really have a ton of strong feelings about this. I just definitely did not love it. I am including this in a reading vlog that will be coming out soon, so if you're interested in more of my thoughts, look out for that. All's Well by Mona Awad is also going to be in that same reading vlog, so if you want to hear more thoughts about that, look out for that. Also, if you want to guess what the theme is, leave it in the comments down below. So this book I did like better than the Chandler Legacies. This one jumps up a whole star. I think I gave this one 3.25, 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it, but didn't love it. We're following our main character named Miranda, and Miranda is a sufferer of chronic pain, and she's also like a theater director at this college. Really feels like her life is kind of slipping out of her control. Her chronic pain is worse than ever. No one respects her as a teacher, as a professor, and she's just really frustrated with her life. So one day she goes to this bar after work and meets these 3 mysterious men who appear to be magical and transfer to her the power to transfer her pain to other people. So Miranda starts going around to her adversaries, people that have hurt her in the past, and transferring her pain to them. And so it's a really interesting take and commentary on women's pain and how sufferers of chronic pain often aren't believed until maybe something similar happens to that person who's passing judgment. It was a super weird, as to be expected from an Awad story, and I feel like it's a book that like lends itself well to discussion. Like I feel like I probably didn't get everything I was meant to get out of this book because I feel like it's the kind of book like Bunny that you get so much more out of if you talk about it with other people. So if anyone's read this and would like to have a discussion with me, I would appreciate it. Like it was definitely super interesting, written well, and I enjoyed what it had to say. I didn't necessarily like have a fun time or a good time reading it, and afterwards I wasn't left with like I'm obsessed with this book kind of feelings, so hence the fairly average rating. I'll talk more about this one too in a reading vlog upcoming, so look out for that. Next is Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander. This is a difficult one to talk about for one main reason, and it's that reading it I really enjoyed it. I liked the story a lot. I liked the romance, but I don't think certain things were handled the best. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars because of these conflicting feelings. This is a romance between Simone and Ray, who are co-workers in this like magazine test kitchen. And throughout this book, it's kind of grumpy sunshine. Simone's pretty grumpy, set in her ways. Ray is very sunshiny and outgoing and really like wants Simone to like them. They're very much golden retriever energy. Ray's the best. So cute. Over the course of this book, Ray comes out as non-binary, which is great, but there's a lot of like on-page misgendering, which I can imagine is very triggering. So if you're not in a place to hear that, I would not recommend this book. Also, Simone kind of dealt with Ray's coming out in not the best way. She kind of like had this discussion with her roommate about how difficult Ray's coming out was on her, which is not a cute look. So I definitely like there's some major glaring issues with this book surrounding Ray's coming out and the reactions of Simone in particular and other people. But on a surface level, I did really enjoy the romance. I thought it was really cute. I thought Ray was so charming, and I really loved seeing them like break down Simone's walls. And even though Simone was like super frustrating character, I did see some of myself in her. She was very much like a perfectionist and rigid in her ways and set in her rules, and I'm like that. So I kind of related to Simone a little bit. So I don't know, I really enjoyed the romance, but there's definitely some issues, so I definitely would not recommend this to everyone, and I would just say to look into it a little bit more if you're interested in reading it before like diving in. Next is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This one is going to be in the same reading vlog as Allswell and the Chandler Legacies, so look out for that. But this was a very interesting read. I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars. I could probably be convinced to round up to 4 because this book was really good. The main problem I had with it is that I spoiled myself before I read it, which is my own fault. I was like flipping to the back to see how many pages the book was. I accidentally saw some very damning information in the author's note, and I was like, shit. It was literally one word, but it gave away everything. So that's on me for sure, but it did kind of like ruin my reading experience because I knew the entire time what was going on. There was a little bit of a red herring that I was like, oh, maybe I'm like kind of wrong, maybe I'm half wrong. No, I was completely 100% right the whole time. So yeah, that's on me. But this is like a super interesting book because on the surface, it's like a creepy thriller about a man who has potentially kidnapped a little girl and her sister, who's been looking for this little girl for the past 10 years. While you're reading it, you don't want to believe Ted is doing it, but there are like so many clues to the contrary. It really is a super interesting book, and I feel like if I went in without knowing the twist, I would have like maybe given it 5 stars because it is really good and really well done. I just wish I hadn't spoiled myself for it, so I don't want to spoil you, so I'm going to stop talking about it. But yeah, this was a really solid thriller that had a deeper meaning and was really good. So I would for sure recommend this. Just do not flip to the back. Next is The First and Last Adventure of Kit Sawyer by S.E. Harmon. This was a male-male romance. It was on KU, and it was kind of like a contemporary fantasy. In it, we're following our main character, Kit, who is from a long line of archaeologists. Kit himself is a researcher in archaeology, like very interested in objects that come from archaeology, but he's not like the adventurous one out there with trekking through the forest and working on digs kind of person. But he gets entangled with this priceless artifact artifact that kind of like bonds itself to him. He's determined to return it to its like resting place with God and statue that it belongs, but the problem is this site has never actually been discovered, so Kit sets off to discover it, and he sets off with his stepbrother, who is infuriating to him and who he's never liked, but also he's always been attracted to. They're not like stepbrothers anymore, but they like used to be, kind of like a clueless situation. But of course, along the journey, they fall in love. The kicker is that the stepbrother has always been in love with Kit, and Kit just needed to get its act together. So this was really cute. I gave it 4 stars. I really did like it. It was fun. It definitely was a little bit more slow burn than it needed to be. I do kind of like something to happen between the two characters, between like the 50% and 75% mark. That's usually like a good place, in my opinion, for things to happen, but some of these books, like, it doesn't happen to the end, and that's okay, but I like them to be together a little bit longer. Yeah, it was good. Just a little long-winded. Next on my list is Whispers in the Dark by Nicole Knight and Lily Mayne. I randomly saw this book on my KU like homepage, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did not know Lily Mayne had a new book out. This is like co-authored, obviously, but still. I was like, how did I not know about this? So I immediately downloaded it, and I immediately read it, and it was really good. This was another monster romance. It was not set in the same world, as far as I could tell, series of monstrous that I love so much from Lily Mayne, but it was very like similar in that it was a male-male romance. It was between a monster and a human. This romance is between a human and the monster that lives under his bed. It was just really sweet and cute. There was a lot of like, our human main character suffered from like a lot of abuse in his childhood home, which is kind of how it was justified that he just like moved to the monster world, you know? That was kind of hard to read about on page. Other than that though, this was like a fairly light story, light on conflict between our main character and our love interest, so that was nice. It was pretty fluffy relationship in general between them. It's very sweet, very cute. I did really enjoy it. I flew through it, and I give it 4 stars. Next on my list is The Long Game by Rachel Reed. This is a continuation from Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed, and it basically follows Shane and Ilya as they deal with having this very serious relationship in private when they are very much in the public eye in the NHL hockey world, and dealing with the ramifications and consequences of that, and also trying to decide if it's worth it or not for them to come out. I really liked this book. If you did watch my vlog where I read the highest and lowest rated books on my Goodreads TBR, I read this one as the highest rated one, and I definitely liked it a lot better than YN, as we'll know if you watched that video. I did really like this one a lot. I thought it was really sweet and cute. There were a couple things that I had issues with that I talked in depth about in that vlog, but overall it was a win for me, and I gave this one 4 stars, and it was definitely the strongest like 4-star of the bunch that I just talked about. Next on my list is The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen by KJ Charles. I gave this book 4.25 stars because I'm very specific, I guess. This was a historical male-male romance between 2 men who originally hook up anonymously but are very drawn to each other, who like a couple months later meet in a very different way, because one character is the leader of like this black market clan who kind of does things under the table. Our other character inherits like a baronship within the same town that his love interest lives in. Our baron does not know the occupation of our black market smuggler. When our baron sees our black market smuggler's sister black market smuggling, he reports it to the police and ends up going on trial. Our black market smuggler does know who our baron is, so tries to stop him before it goes to trial, but he does not succeed, and so there's this very dramatic courtroom scene at the very beginning. I'm not spoiling anything, this is just how they get reintroduced. And he's like, oh shit, I actually don't want to tell on your sister because I really like you. So they're kind of in very like 2 different worlds, so that's where the conflict comes from mostly, but of course love prevails. So this was a really cute story. I really enjoyed it a lot. I really enjoyed our 2 characters. I liked the world that KJ Charles built, and their romance was super cute. It could have been a little bit less slow burn. There could have been a little bit less of like politics and stuff. Like I feel like a lot of the plot happened in like the last 30%. I feel like it just could have been a little bit more well distributed, which is why it didn't get 5 stars, but I did really like it and enjoyed it a lot and would certainly recommend. Next is Infamous by Lex Croucher. I was surprised by how much I liked this one. I kind of just checked it out from a whim from the library, and I listened to the audiobook. The audiobook is fabulous, by the way. I would 100% recommend, and I ended up giving this one 4.25 stars. If you couldn't tell from the cover, cover. This is a historical female-female romance set in like the Regency era, but basically we're following our main character Eddie and her best friend Rose. They've always done everything together, even practicing kissing, but Eddie is very hard-headed and does not understand that Rose has like always been in love with her. She can't figure out why she is so jealous that Rose is getting married. And so Rose and Eddie are kind of having a bit of a conflict of interest. And in the meantime, Eddie is also getting tangled up with this horrible writer. Eddie wants to be a writer. She meets her like idol and he promises to help her with like hone her craft and invites her to this writer's retreat. Rose's fiance is friends with this writer and so they go as well. And it becomes a mess because this writer is just horrible and only cares about getting Eddie in bed. And so Rose is kind of like trying to protect her, but Eddie is just a mess. I really liked this. I don't know if it was just the audiobook and like the narrator's accents that I like loved so much, but I just was obsessed with this book. Eddie was definitely like a very frustrating main character to read about, but Rose was so lovely and wonderful that it made up for it. And some of these scenes of them together were just so beautiful. Like only a romance between two women could be this beautiful. Like I feel like I always think that when I find a really good sapphic romance, I'm like the emotions, the feelings, the like intimacy of it is just so unlike anything else. I don't know, it's just so beautiful. Particularly like the bath scene. Oh my god, such a good scene. Like I really did love this book a lot. I gave it 4.25 stars. Mostly like the annoyance I had with Eddie is the only reason why this wasn't 5 stars. I really loved it. I feel like this has kind of low ratings on Goodreads, which I really can't understand why because I thought it was great. I loved it. Another romance I read recently that I really loved was All the Right Notes by Dominique Lim. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really loved this one a lot. In this book, we're following our main character, Quito, who is a composer trying to make it in New York City. He feels like he's finally got his big break because he has been asked to help compose for this play. But, of course, this is when he finds out that his father has become ill, so he has to go back to San Francisco to care for his father and also to sub for his father's music class because his father teaches choir at a local high school, and one of his father's dying wishes is for like the winter concert to still be put on, and he also wants Quito to invite his childhood best friend Emmett. Emmett is now a famous movie star and Quito has not spoken to him in a really long time. His father is trying to meddle in his life and get him and Emmett to speak again because they used to be such close friends and his father misses that for his son. So this is just such a beautiful story. It's about music and family and love, second chances, and like growing in confidence for yourself and like accepting a new path in life. It was way more profound than like a lot of romances I read. Not every romance has to be profound, obviously, but I think that's why this one just really resonated with me so much. I really loved it. I thought it was so beautiful and I would like recommend this to almost everyone. Like I feel like almost everyone can get something out of this. It was so beautiful. I loved it a lot. All right, and my favorite book that was not a reread was A Wolf Song by TJ Klune. This is the first book in TJ Klune's paranormal romance werewolf series. I feel like this is like quintessential supernatural romance, ABO romance type of deal. Like this is the OG. Crazy that I haven't read it yet. And it is wild that I haven't read it yet because I really did love it. So Wolf Song is Ox and Joe's love story. This book starts out when they're pretty young and they just basically become childhood friends. As they grow older, transitions into lovers, and there's also this like evil that is trying to wipe out the Bennett pack because Joe's a werewolf, surprise. And so Joe has to spend a lot of his time and energy dedicated to trying to fight off this evil. In that time, Ox kind of has to step up and become an alpha in his own right, and his whole entire life he's been kind of put down by everyone in his life, his father, kids that he goes to school with. He's never really fit in, but he finally fits in with Joe and his family. So this is very much a story of not only like romance, action, but also like found family, finding a purpose, finding your confidence, finding yourself. It really is like an incredible story. It was really beautifully written. I did think the writing was a little bit dated, just a little bit like try hard Tumblr writing. And I think that was because of the era it was written in, perhaps, and the fact that it was originally self-published, I believe. So like I had like a few minor issues with the writing, and I also think the middle chunk was a bit slow, and it might have been my fault because I did take a break in the middle of the book, so it probably made it feel slower. But there was quite a bit of time where the main character, where Ox and Joe like were not together, that I felt like could have been shortened a little bit. because I'm here for the romance, you know? It was a little just very sad and depressing for a while there, but overall it was really good. This honestly is like a masterpiece, and I gave it 4.5 stars and I really loved it, and it was really great. The best new book that I read over the last 2 months. But of course I do have one more book because we are talking about 16 books today. I did end up rereading Moth by Lily Mayne last month, and so that is my favorite book of the month, obviously, because it is a 5-star masterpiece. Like, nothing can beat Moth, literally nothing. Like, it is so good. I just like had a craving to reread Moth, and so I did. And if you've never heard me talk about this book before, you must be new here. Moth is the 5th book in Lily Mayne's Monstrous series, which is a KU post-apocalyptic monster male-male romance series. The world is like this post-apocalyptic world where monsters have crossed over into the human world, created an apocalypse. People, like, some people live in military-controlled cities along the coast. Other people live just out in the wastes, just on their own. Each subsequent book is a different romance between a different monster. And Moth is my favorite book of all time because it's just so lovely. Like, Moth is half monster, half human, and he is very prickly, does not feel like he belongs either world because monsters don't like him because he's too human, humans don't like him because he's half monster. So Moth has always just been an outsider, and he's very like prickly and defensive because of that. And Charlie just comes in and like breaks down all of Moth's walls, just is so kind and caring, and the sex scenes in this book are so important to me because they're just like aggressively consensual and so lovely, and Charlie is just like making sure Moth is okay at all times, and I've just never read anything like it before. I've never read anything like it before, and this is my 3rd time reading this book, and I just love it so much. I want to protect Moth with everything I have. Like, I see a lot of myself in Moth, and I just am so happy for him and so proud of him and just want to give him a hug. I just love Moth so much, the character and the book. I was really glad I read it again. It's obviously 5 stars, and it's obviously my favorite book that I've read the past 2 months, so I couldn't not put it in first, even though it's a reread. Alright, and that was my wrap up for September and October. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below the best book that you read in September or October, the last couple of months, whenever. If you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to subscribe and stick around and hit the bell notification to be notified of any of my new content. If you want to help out my channel too, liking this video or leaving a comment is a great way to do so. I've also linked all the books that I've talked about down below through my Amazon affiliate links. I get like a tiny commission if you buy through them. No expectation, of course. It's just there if you want it. Way to support me at no like extra cost to you if you're planning to buy the books anyway. But yeah, I think my social media is also linked down below if you're interested on following me on any other platform. And I think that is actually all for me today. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.